Welcome to the Business Bites Podcast, the podcast for busy entrepreneurs. Whether you're an online entrepreneur or seeking after brick and mortar success, this podcast brings you quick bites of content so you can learn and grow anywhere you are. Now here's your host, Rachel Brainke.
Hey guys, welcome to this episode of the Business Bites Podcast. I am your host, Rachel Brainke, and today's episode is a little different because normally I'm never actually sitting in the exact same room with the guest, but I have Christina Blanarovich today. We are going to be talking about branding photography for entrepreneurs, why you guys need to have it, how to find a photographer, how to prepare for it, and what to expect. Christina is actually my brand photographer. I've had multiple shoots with her. She shoots film and digital. She is in the New York City area, and she is an expert at helping to tell stories through the brand photography. She actually started as a wedding and portrait photographer, did that for about a decade, and now has transitioned to commercial photography. She has been published. She's awesome, and I am stoked actually because we're recording 2 episodes. This is episode 99. You guys are going to be able to find all of the show notes and links to Christina's stuff at rachelbrainke.com/EPI99. But if you are a photographer, not only should you listen to this episode because we're going to talk about how for you guys to also have brand photography for yourself, but in episode 101 in a couple of weeks, we are going to be speaking directly to you photographers about why you should be offering commercial and marketing brand photography, how to offer it, etc. Not only is Christina a brand photographer like she does for me and for many of you guys, she is for hire, FYI, but she also helps photographers and coaches them to offer brand photography. So long-winded introduction, but that's because you're so amazing. So welcome to the episode.
Thanks for having me.
I am stoked. So this episode, so 99, we're talking about why to have brand photography, but let's kind of give a little context of what exactly brand photography is. I mean, I feel like a lot of people kind of think that it's confined to headshots, but in this day of social media, that's not the case.
No, absolutely not. And I think that's probably one of the most important things that people need to realize is that brand photography, when done right, isn't just a handful of headshots, because a handful of headshots is just kind of like how you look in the moment, but a brand photography session creates content for you to really reach out to your perfect avatar, your perfect client that you want to hire you.
FYI, I didn't pay her to use the term client avatar. You guys know that I reference episode 12 a lot, the magic of a client avatar. So this definitely helps to bridge. Again, if you guys need links to external episodes, it's all going to be at rachelbrainke.com/EPI99. But in the interest of the client avatar, that is really important. Good buzz phrase. You guys know I love it. And I think that's why Christina and I get along so well. So let's answer for them why to have brand photography. I mean, so we just explained what it is, but why should entrepreneurs, even photographers included, but why should entrepreneurs in general have a brand photography session done?
I think one of the most important reasons is that when we're trying to reach out to our avatars, I know you love the word and I use it all the time too, and that is definitely not a paid promotion there. One of the most important things is when we're trying to reach out to people, the whole purpose is we're trying to create a relationship. We want our clients to get to know us and trust us so they hire us, no matter what you do, whether you're a photographer, whether you're a fitness professional, a health professional, it doesn't matter what your job is. You want to reach out to clients and create relationships with them. You want to build a bridge from them to you. And the only way to do that in our visual society is to create brand content work that really showcases not only who you are, but how you can help them. You have to be relatable. And that's not going to happen with the same smiling photo of you standing in front of a backdrop that everybody has on their websites. You have to have more relatable material. You have to have constantly changing relatable material so that the client feels like they are a part of your life.
So you guys can't see it, but Christina's giving me a knowing look because she just had a battle with me for my brand session and trying to talk to me about this sort of stuff because I have a huge weakness with visual branding. Even though I've been a photographer myself, I feel like, I can create it for other people, but I can't create it for myself. And for me, that's why I find it is so important to find the right brand photographer, which we'll get to here in a minute. But it's so true. Christina just said about making the connections with your audience and duplicating and sharing the exact same headshot or photos over and over again. And I'm raising my hand because I'm just as guilty of not having enough visual content to put out there. I mean, consider this. Your Instagram photos, what's the shelf life? A couple of days, if that, even a couple hours in a day, and you can't keep cycling the exact same 3 photos through your entire Instagram feed. It's just not going to work. It's not going to create that connection, and it's going to become old hat and people are going to leave. And that's why it's really important, especially if you're someone like me who struggles with visual branding, to find a good, solid brand photographer. And I think this is really the section of the podcast of why I really wanted Christina to come on, because I think a lot of entrepreneurs can be convinced that they need to have this visual branding. They know it's a weakness. They need to outsource it, but they don't know how to find the right brand photographer. I'm lucky that my brand photographer is also one of my closest friends. She gets me, but it didn't start that way. We started by doing brand photography together, and it's because of the knowledge that you have. So share with them a bit some tips of how to find the right brand photographer that can help you create that visual branding.
Like you said, I think a lot of people's weaknesses is just the fact that you need it, but you don't know how to get it. And you don't know how to step back and look at it from a client's perspective. We have in our own heads as entrepreneurs how we want to present ourselves, which is great, and that's important. But we also need to balance that with how our clients want to see us or want to be a part of our lives. So having a brand photographer who just isn't a photo taker. They could be a fantastic portrait photographer, but a really, truly great brand photographer is going to help you actually sit down, figure out your avatar, and create content around that. I push back with all my clients, Sue. You're not the only one.
Yes,
although I do have to admit, I probably push back more with you. But I push back with all my clients because my clients will always give me a shot list. And guys, I love a shot list to work off because I want to know what you see and what's important to you. But I want to take that shot list and I want to take it farther because the shot list is your side of it. We need to bring in your client side of it. And that's where having a brand photographer who will do the work to look through your Instagram, talk to you about who your client is, what your brand represents, who you represent, what's important to you. Those are all the things that we need to bring across in a brand shoot. It's so much more than just you in front of a camera.
And you know what I find interesting with that is I've worked with Christina a couple times now. And the first time it was kind of, I trust you, let's see what we can do. We're gonna do some urban shots. This last time today, we spent all day shooting and I had sent her like extensive outfit choices and photographs. But even looking at it now, a full day of shooting is really what is needed. And the amount of photos that I had put on a pinboard wasn't even enough. So for me, it was great to be able to provide this quote unquote shot list to her so that she could visually see what was in my brain. But then I trusted her to take it above and beyond that. Because even if I sent a pinboard of 50 photos, well, if I do one photo a day, that's only 50 days. Shelf life is super short. So for me, looking at how to find a brand photographer is asking the questions to ensure that A, they're going to allow for a shot list, because that's kind of the only way for someone who's visually design challenged like myself to convey it. You know, I can see it in my head, but I can't articulate it. So I have to go out on the web, Pinterest, Instagram. I did screenshots of other educators and sent them along, but I really needed to find someone, which I cheated and already had, but I think it's really important to find somebody that can take it beyond that and trust them to fill in the gaps for you on that. As far as like, for maybe let's talk a little bit about a technical standpoint, because like you mentioned, it's a solid portrait or wedding photographer can provide solid work. We're talking also about this other portion of being able to do almost a consultative coaching side of things when it comes to the brand. But let's talk about the technical. Like, what are some things that when you're looking to hire someone, because I know you do film and digital, are there certain technical specs that we need to ask of a photographer?
Well, absolutely. If your brand photography, you have to figure out what are the uses. So obviously with commercial work, you might have just social media use, but you might want to be using it. I work with small businesses, large businesses, people who are, using these images on billboards.
Really large, and we can't share the name yet, but by the time this episode airs, if you go to the episode page, hopefully we can share some of the big names there.
But one of the things is you have to know what your usage is for. Are you going to be using this just for web? Are you going to be using this in print? Are you going to be using this, in a large scale type of way? If you're teaching, if you're like you do a lot of speaking. Perhaps you need a giant billboard of you when you're speaking at an event. So you want to make sure that whatever you are going to be using it for, that photographer can provide. Now, it's not something that most wedding photographers, and when I was a wedding photographer, I didn't kind of think this way. I thought about larger prints, but I didn't think about the necessity for high resolution to commercial level. So that's why I do shoot film and digital, and it really depends on what my clients' needs are. I know certain clients need a fast turnover. Certain clients are going to need the really high resolution images to be used. So they're going to obviously be more of my digital clients. Some people really want the look of film, so that's when I go back to my roots for that. But technically, you also want somebody who can think beyond the portrait. Because as a wedding and portrait photographer, we're very used to looking at the prettiest portrait, but the prettiest portrait isn't always what's necessary to convey a message in a business. Sometimes you want the bloopers.
Do you want to share the cupcake story from today? And maybe we'll have an example when we air.
So we were trying to come up with a reason to incorporate something else besides just...
She's trying to make me more relatable.
You're very relatable. You just don't believe it. You're the one who thinks you're not relatable. I know you are. So we decided to walk by this little cupcake store, and Rachel went in and we got a cupcake, and she's sitting out on the front stoop eating the cupcake, and I'm like, just go ahead, bite into the cupcake. She bites into the cupcake, and oh boy.
It was so sweet. It was good, so I apologize if they're listening. They're a great cupcake shop, but it was just, we've had so much coffee today, I think it was over the top.
Probably. So she's biting into this cupcake, guys, and I just want you to envision the look of extreme disgust and horror as this cupcake is crumbling off her face, and the shoot is just, that is not going the way we had originally envisioned. But I kept shooting through it because I think it's gold personally. And one of the things that I saw in my head as I was shooting through Rachel making the most interesting faces, was I saw how she could use this. I saw how she could use this image and say, hey guys, like when things don't go right, when you have this grand master plan, and then with the first bite, it falls apart and it's just awful. What do you do? So I think it's great as a brand photographer, as a commercial photographer, you have to shoot thinking, what else could this be used for? How else can I see this? And another really important fact is giving multiple setups of the same image, of this, or multiple images of the same setup, because you have to move. I mean, you saw me today. I would move around you 5-6 times and then be like, all right, don't move. I'm moving. I'm shooting. I'm in. I'm out. I'm all over the place. And then we change it up because that gives you variety.
And just an FYI, we're going to talk a bit more about that in the approach to shooting in episode 101 in a couple weeks. So photographers, if you're listening, you can come back and learn some more tips from Christina on that. But definitely, I hope you guys that are looking to hire a brand photographer are taking these tips down. I want to ask one last thing before we move on of how to prepare for the session. Of course, I got to bring in the legal side of things because it's what I do, and you guys know I'm not going to let you get away with it. But one of the tough questions I think that you need to ask when you're going to hire a brand photographer, since this is commercial in nature and it's not a personal portrait session, you need to ask what can I, as the person that's receiving the photograph, what are the uses? Am I going to get to own the copyrights to the photographs because then I have control over it? Or am I going to have, what kind of license, And every brand photographer is going to be different. And I wish I could give you like one solid recommendation of what it should be. I've talked about this in other episodes, and I talk about this actually in some of the copyright classes on rachelbranke.com, that there's pluses and minuses as to whether or not you want to pay for copyright conveyance. If I hire Christina, by default in the United States, copyright remains with her because she's not an employee of my company. I'm contracting her only for a brand session or a couple. And so she would need to either convey copyright ownership to me if I want to be the owner of it and be able to have full control over the use of those images, or she can and we can negotiate a commercial license. And the reason I'm not getting into specifics and I just say commercial license is it's going to vary. It's exactly back to what Christina was just talking about before. What uses are you going to need to use it for? What uses does the photographer want to allow you to use it for? Now, in commercial photography, it's pretty broad. It's a lot broader than it's going to be for a personal portrait session. I just think that it's important going in. These are the questions that you need to ask because unfortunately that I find, and on the law firm side of things, I do a lot of copyright infringement, is many of you may not know the little tidbit I just threw out a bit ago, that when I hire Christina, unless I transfer copyrights to me, she owns all of it. So I don't own the photographs, even though that I'm in them. I only have a license at that point, which may be okay, but understand if a third party goes and utilizes it, I'm dependent upon Christina then to take up the reins to pursue them for copyright infringement. So these are things you guys need to think about, questions you need to ask. Just understand that where the ownership lies. And there's other episodes on copyright. I don't want to go too much further in this episode, but we'll link it on the show notes page as well. I just want to ask one question to you on that. How do you work that with your clients when they ask about ownership transfer versus licensing?
Honestly, it depends on the client. When I work with the larger corporations, or if somebody is going to be using this for more commercial work in the sense where they are literally going to be getting money because of the images that I'm using, that I've provided for them, then I charge a usage fee, or I charge a license for that. But when I work with small business owners, when I'm doing the brand work for more entrepreneurs or small businesses, I find that confuses them.
Yeah.
And they're not needing it for those purposes.
They need to listen to the Business Bites podcast, apparently.
Yes, they do. So I generally will ask them what their purpose is, and then if it's for social media, if it's for their website, if it's for, small print, then I kind of just utilize the usage fee within my regular pricing for them and try to keep it as simple as possible and very laid out in my contract. Mm-hmm. Thank you for all of the wonderful help with that. But, keeping it all laid out and easy to understand.
And just an FYI on that, and then we'll move on to the next topic, is shameless plug for myself, one of my brands, thelawtog.com. It's also linked at rachelbranke.com, but that it has commercial licenses and commercial contracts. So if you're going to do this and maybe your brand photographer doesn't have one, you can send them there. They can snag a template that they can use for y'all. My Texas is coming out.
Texas is coming out. But I just want to say your brand photographer absolutely should have
100%.
Contract.
100%. So even if you're not going to do copyright transfer, it sets expectations, it protects both of you guys. And to be honest, I will not, of course, I'm an attorney, but I won't hire someone that doesn't have a contract for something, because I want to know what is expected of me and what is expected of them, and that we have it all in one central place. All right, so let's wrap up a bit, but prepare these entrepreneurs listening with tips on how to actually prepare for their session. I mean, how do you even approach that? Because I think that's the other side of overwhelm, why people don't go to do a branding shoot. Not only can they not find the photographer, but then they don't even know how to prepare for the actual session itself.
Right. I think one of the most important things to do to prepare is what you did. You created just kind of a visual shot list because that helps your photographer understand what's in your brain.
So basically be a control freak.
Be a control. It is important as an entrepreneur, as a business owner, you do have to have control over it. You do want to make sure that what you have in your head is being shared with the world because you're creating your brand message. You want to do that.
And actually on that, so I've admitted that visual branding has been a weakness of mine. So I have given unfettered trust to people in the past, people, i.e. brand photographers, and expected them to execute, but they couldn't execute if I don't show them or tell them. And so marks were missed, and I have to take responsibility for not providing, the shot list or at least some visual examples.
I think it's also important to work with your photographer on knowing who your avatar is because your photographer absolutely needs to know who your clientele is because how on earth can you make somebody relatable when you could be thinking their ideal avatar is somebody who is very low key and relaxed and wants to have fun and smiles. And in reality, they're going after high powered people who are.
Well, let's use the example of me. If I had just come to you and you didn't know who I was and I said, I'm an attorney and I need a visual branding shoot, you'd probably put me just by default, maybe into a more corporate style session. Instead, she gets someone with ripped jeans and a nose ring. Because that's who I'm talking to and that's who my audience wants. And so, yeah, I think that's a good example of not to ask more questions, not to attach to just one specific title or idea.
And then the other thing that I would recommend is really sit down and look through your potential photographer's portfolio, look at other brand sessions, see what they do and what they provide. Because if it's all just smiling shots and that's not your thing, or you're going to want a few, but if they aren't able to provide variety that you need, then you need to keep looking. And honestly, I'm not everybody's brand photographer. I am not a very super corporate brand photographer. And I will refer people to friends of mine in the area that I'm like, what you are looking for, that's what this person specializes in. I specialize in something totally different. So.
And I think that's important. That is also a good mark of when you're going back to talk about finding a photographer. If they're able to step up and say, I'm not for you, I respect you way more than if you try to do it, waste my time and money and botch it. So as far as the tangible preparation side of things, before we go into that, one thing I was going to say, you mentioned asking to look at their portfolio and stuff. I kind of like to go from a backdoor sort of way and go to my friends or other people in the industry and see work that they have and ask to see and just see how their brand sessions, how much content they got, just because sometimes I fear that brand photographers are only going to put the best content in their portfolio, and I want to see the whole gallery of what I'm actually going to be delivered.
And that's what I'm saying. Ask for an entire gallery. I will happily show full galleries of all the images so that you know what to expect. And I also like to send it when I actually have clients reach out to me and we're talking about how much time they need, because a lot of clients think, I only need an hour. No. An hour is a headshot session that's going to get you a handful of images. When you're talking about creating content that hopefully you can use over months, if not a year, you need time. You need time to change. You need time to move to different locations. You need time to brainstorm. I mean, how many times did we just stop in the middle of our sessions today and just say, wait a second, what haven't we created? What do we need to do? How do we need to change this up? Let's look over here. Let's think. We put our heads together and came up with new ideas on the fly. So when I actually work with clients and I'm creating a timeline of how long you're going to need for brand photography, I give them ideas of sessions that I've done. I said, here's an example of a full gallery from a 2-hour session. Look at how limited it is. And the reason there was a 2-hour session is because I work with this person every 2 or 3 months, and so they only needed that little extra bit of, new photos. But here's a session that I did that we literally shot for 6 to 8 hours. And that's you. But I think we're working on 9 now.
But you know what? And I'm glad you brought that up because we've done the 2-hour session and we've also done now the 6 to 8 hour. And there's probably people sitting there that are very busy like myself thinking, well, I can't carve out 6 to 8 hours. Guys, it is so much more efficient for me to pull out 8 to 10 outfits. And we're going to talk about it here in a second. But 8 to 10 outfits, go to like 5, 6 locations because we pretty much did walking from where my office is, and not have to. I only had to do my makeup once. I only had to do my hair once, and I brought a hair tie to be able to throw it out. I brought a hat, like variation. So it was more efficient and especially since I hired Christina to come from out of state. So it was overall cheaper, but it was also overall more efficient for her to come down and let me block off an entire day from other work and basically batch process and get this all done at once and whip through the outfits, take our time, purposely thinking, because it would have been more time and more expensive to do 2 hours here and 2 hours there.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. I highly recommend that when you are doing this, and I work with a lot of repeat clients where every year or twice a year, we sit down and we do this. Sometimes they'll even rent spaces to have different looks, but it is important to say, hey, I'm going to get all this done. Let's really kind of just muscle through it, and you have it then. And you don't have to keep worrying and keep thinking, all right, well, I'm running out of content. What do I do?
Yeah, and because that was one of the things that happened last year. It's been a whole year. Oh my goodness. We did a 2-hour session last year in New York, and I quit because I thought, and it's all really the only time I had at the time, but I quickly ran out of utilizing. I burned through those photographs very quickly. So let's shift real quick, talk about more like the tangible preparation outfit stuff. I think I thought I was going to have too many outfits, and come to find out that to get the amount of variation that we wanted, I probably didn't have enough. But I do think that we nailed it in the sense that I had like 3 to 4 pants. I had multiple shirts, and then we had a variation in jackets / sweaters. And we were able to mix and match them relatively easily, stay within my brand colors. And I'm not looking at you because I don't have brand colors. They are black and white, monochromatic.
I did get you in leopard print. That was mine, all right?
That is very
Your
true.
brand photographer should literally give you the shirt off her back.
Yes, literally walking down the street half naked because she gave me her sweater. That's how you need to find a brand photographer. But seriously, is there anything we could have improved upon today? So I probably had 6 outfits, and then so with the variations, maybe 9 to 10 to 12 variations. I'd have to go back and look at the photos, but
more is always better. I always tell people, like, if you roll in with a giant suitcase, I am a happy camper because we can lay it all out and then I can look through it. And sometimes what you think is going to work, I'm going to look at and go, all right, but and we had that problem today. You had a bunch of outfits, but I was like, but those 3 tops.
Just say it. A bunch of black outfits. Everything was black.
And 3 of the black shirts, honestly, on camera looked identical. And the way that I wanted to use them, it didn't work. So variations, and make sure that you're looking at variations in color, or if you're not a color person, at least variations in texture. And style. So that you have a variety. You can't just wear, well, I want to wear only a fitted shirt because anything flowy is going to make me look bigger than I am. No, you have to have variations in style. Trust that your photographer is going to make you look good and find the best angles, and give them a little bit of freedom and creativity to look through your wardrobe and say, I like this and here's why.
And another thing with that, I also made sure I had a variation in casual and more dressed up, and then short sleeve and long sleeve. So I could have done better on the texture and color aspect, but I do think, because that was another issue we had last year, and I wouldn't say an issue, it was a learning lesson, right? I only had time for a 2-hour session, but it was cold in New York. They're almost all winter clothes. So in this summer this year, when I wanted to use those photographs again, well, it would be weird for me to have a pea coat with a scarf on when it's 100 degrees outside. It just didn't seem real and relatable to the time of year.
Right.
So I think that we did good with long sleeve, short sleeve, and variations today.
And that's what you can do in a longer session. You can actually change it up and find the pockets. Like, yes, we have fall leaves out here, but when you were in the short sleeves, we found pockets of areas that, a brick wall that nobody knows what time of year it is when you're out, on your phone or drinking a coffee with a plain wall behind you. So that really helps you be able to utilize your content all throughout the year.
And that may have been one of the changes that I would make for the future when we do another session, is to not do it because here it's fall in Virginia. So all the leaves are essentially, the trees are half naked and they're really golden, orange and yellow. I probably should have done it sooner so there's a bit more green, because green is kind of classic year round. It's not as noticeable as when it's in autumn color around. Was there any other tips of things? I mean, use me as an example. I'm totally cool with that. Like, that we could have improved upon that would help them, I guess. Well, my biggest tip is understand it's tiring. Going into a full day, very caffeinated, but very tired, stay hydrated. The good thing for us is my office is downtown where we were shooting, but if you are going into a location, Christina mentioned having the suitcase for clothing. I would even recommend having food and water and all of that, because it is a long day. And if you're wanting maximizing your shooting time,
I would also recommend having somebody there to be a Sherpa.
Yeah.
It's important to have someone, bring a friend, bring somebody who can carry things, hold things, help you change, help you just adjust, because honestly, like, you don't want your photographer doing that, because you want them focused on you and what's the best angle, and you don't want to constantly be putting things down and picking things up and putting things down and picking things up. So having an extra set of hands, when I do brand shoots up by me, I always bring an assistant that basically does that, but obviously when I travel, that makes it a little bit more difficult. So I recommend that people have, and it's sometimes nice to just have a friend who can be that extra support system for you.
Awesome. All right. So guys, this has been a pretty long episode, but this is a subject that I'm super passionate about, and it's actually something that has overwhelmed me. So I really wanted to break it down for you entrepreneurs that are like, oh, I know I need brand photography, but I don't know where to go. This is a lot of great tips. Just know, if you would like Christina to come to your town, she is for hire. All her links and everything are going to be at rachelbrinky.com/EPI99. And photographers, don't forget, we'll have episode 101 in a couple of weeks. We're going to be talking directly to you guys about how to execute and market, how to offer, and make brand photography successful for your business. So thanks, Christina.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks for joining Rachel on this episode of The Business Bites. For show notes, a list of recommended tools, or referenced episodes, you can find them at businessbitespodcast.com. Until next time.